Hey travelers, welcome to my channel. If you're new to this channel, do not forget to click the like button, subscribe button, and also our notification bell for more updates. For today's virtual trip, we're going to fly in Spain, also known as the Kingdom of Spain. So now, fasten your seatbelt, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight because you're watching Travel from Home.
Spain, country located in extreme southwestern Europe. It occupies about 85% of the Iberian Peninsula, which it shares with its smaller neighbor Portugal. Spain is a storied country of stone castles, snow-capped mountains, vast monuments, and sophisticated cities, all of which have made it a favored travel destination. The country is geographically and culturally diverse. Its heartland is the Meseta, a broad central plateau half a mile above sea level. Much of the region is traditionally given over to cattle ranching and grain production. It was in this rural setting that Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote tilted at the tall windmills that still dot the landscape in several places. In the country's northeast are the broad valley of the Ebro River, the mountainous region of Catalonia, and the hilly coastal plain of Valencia. To the northwest is the Cantabrian Mountains, a rugged range in which heavily forested, rain-swept valleys are interspersed with tall peaks. To the south is the citrus orchard-rich and irrigated lands of the valley of the Guadalquivir River, celebrated in the renowned lyrics of Spanish poets Federico, García, Lorca, and Machado. Over this valley rises the snow-capped Sierra Nevada. The southern portion of the country is desert, an extension of the Sahara made familiar to Americans through the spaghetti western films of the 1960s and early 70s. Lined with palm trees, rosemary bushes, and other tropical vegetation, the southeastern Mediterranean coast and the Balearic Islands enjoy a gentle climate, drawing millions of visitors and retirees, especially from northern Europe. Spain's countryside is quaint, speckled with castles, aqueducts, and ancient ruins, but its cities are resoundingly modern. The Andalusian capital of Seville, Seville is famed for its musical culture and traditional folkways, the Catalonian capital of Barcelona for its secular architecture and maritime industry, and the national capital of Madrid for its winding streets, its museums and bookstores, and its around-the-clock lifestyle. Madrid is Spain's largest city and is also its financial and cultural center, as it has been for hundreds of years. The many and varied cultures that have gone into the making of Spain, those of the Castilians, Catalonians, Lusitanians, Galicians, Basques, Romans, Arabs, Jews, and Roma Gypsies, among other peoples, are renowned for their varied cuisines, customs, and prolific contributions to the world's artistic heritage. The country's Roman conquerors left their language, roads, and monuments, while many of the Roman Empire's greatest rulers were Spanish, among them Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. The Moors, who ruled over portions of Spain for nearly 800 years, left a legacy of fine architecture, lyric poetry, and science. The Roma contributed the haunting music called the cantejando, a form of flamenco which, wrote García Lorca, comes from remote races and crosses the graveyard of the years and the fronts of parched wines. It comes from the first sub and the first keys. Even the Vandals, Huns, and Visigoths who swept across Spain following the fall of Rome are remembered in words and monuments, which prompted García Lorca to remark, "In Spain, the dead are more alive than the dead of any other country in the world." In 1492, the year the last of the Moorish rulers were expelled from Spain, ships under the command of Christopher Columbus reached America. For 300 years afterward, Spanish explorers and conquerors traveled the world, claiming huge territories for the Spanish crown, a succession of Castilian, Aragonese, Habsburg, and Bourbon rulers. For generations Spain was arguably the richest country in the world, and certainly the most far-flung. With the steady erosion of its continental and overseas empire throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, however, Spain was all but forgotten in world affairs, save for the 3 years that the ideologically charged Spanish Civil War 1936–39 put the country at the center of the world stage, only to become ever more insular and withdrawn during the 4 decades of rule by dictator Francisco Franco. Following Franco's death in 1975, a Bourbon king, Juan Carlos, returned to the throne and established a constitutional monarchy. The country has been ruled since then by a succession of elected governments, some socialist, some conservative, but all devoted to democracy. Spain accounts for 5/6 of the Iberian Peninsula, the roughly quadrilateral southwestern tip of Europe that separates the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean. Most of Spain comprises a large plateau, the Meseta Central, divided by a mountain range, the Central Sierra Sistema Central, which trends west-southwest to east-northeast. Several mountains border the plateau: the Cantabrian Mountains, Cordillera Cantabrica to the north, the Iberian Cordillera Sistema Iberico to the northeast and east, the Sierra Morena to the south, and the lower mountains of the Portuguese frontier and Spanish Galicia to the northwest. The Pyrenees run across the neck of the peninsula and form Spain's border with France. There are two major depressions, that of the Ebro River in the northeast and that of the Guadalquivir River in the southwest. In the southeast, the Batik Cordillera Sistema Penibetico runs broadly parallel to the coast to merge with the mountains of the Iberian Cordillera. Along the Mediterranean seaboard there are coastal plains, some with lagoons, e.g., Albufera, south of Valencia. Offshore in the Mediterranean, the Balearic Islands are an unsubmerged portion of the Batik Cordillera. The Canary Islands in the Atlantic are of volcanic origin and contain the highest peak on Spanish territory, Tide Peak, which rises to 12,198 feet 3,718 meters on the island of Tenerife. Spain has some of the oldest as well as some of the youngest rocks of Europe. The entire western half of Iberia, with the exception of the extreme south, is composed of ancient Hercynian rocks. Geologists refer to this Hercynian block as the Meseta Central. It constitutes a relatively stable platform around which younger sediments accumulated, especially on the Mediterranean side. In due course these sediments were pushed by major earth movements into mountain ranges. Although some maintain that aridity rivals civil war as the chief curse of historic Spain, the Iberian Peninsula has a dense network of streams, three of which rank among Europe's longest: the Tagus at 626 miles, 1,007 kilometro, the Ebro at 565 miles, 900 kilometro, and the Douro at 556 miles, 895 kilometro. The Guadalquivir and the Guadalquivir are 508 miles, 818 kilometro, and 408 miles, 657 kilometro long, respectively. The Tagus, like the Douro and the Guadalquivir, reaches the Atlantic Ocean in Portugal. In fact, all the major rivers of Spain except the Ebro drain into the Atlantic Ocean. The hydrographic network on the Mediterranean side of the watershed is poorly developed in comparison with the Atlantic systems, partly because it falls into the climatically driest parts of Spain. However, nearly all Iberian rivers have low annual volume, irregular regimes, and deep valleys and even canyons. Flooding is always a potential hazard. The short, swift streams of Galicia and Cantabria, draining to the northwestern and northern coasts, respectively, have only a slight or, at most, modest summer minimum. The predominant fluvial regime in Spain is thus characterized by a long or very long summer period of low water. This is the regime of all the major arteries that drain the Meseta as well as those of the Mediterranean seaboard, such as the Júcar and the Segura. For example, from August to September the Guadalquivir River usually has less than one-tenth of its average annual flow. Only the Ebro River has a relatively constant and substantial flow, 19,081 cubic feet 540 cubic meters per second at Tortosa, coming from snowmelt as well as rainfall in the High Pyrenees. In comparison, the flow of the Douro is only 5,050 cubic feet 143 cubic meters per second. The flow of many Iberian streams has been reduced artificially by water extraction for purposes such as irrigation. Subterranean flow is well developed in limestone districts. There are 5 major soil types in Spain. 2 are widely distributed but of limited extent: alluvial soils, found in the major valleys and coastal plains, and poorly developed, or truncated, mountain soils. Brown forest soils are restricted to humid Galicia and Cantabria. Acidic southern brown earths leading to restricted crop choice are prevalent on the crystalline rocks of the western Meseta, and gray, brown, or chestnut soils have developed on the calcareous and alkaline strata of the eastern Meseta and of eastern Spain in general. Saline soils are found in the Ebro Basin and coastal lowlands. Calcrates, subsoil zonal crusts, tosques, usually of hardened calcium carbonate, are particularly well developed in the arid regions of the east, La Mancha, Almeria, Murcia, Alicante, Alacan, and Valencia, as well as the Ebro and Lledó basins. Soil erosion resulting from the vegetation degradation suffered by Spain for at least the past 3,000 years has created extensive badlands, reduced soil cover, downstream alluviation, and, more recently, silting of dams and irrigation works. Particularly affected are the high areas of the central plateau and southern and eastern parts of Spain. Although the origins of some of the spectacular badlands of southeastern Spain, such as Guadix, may lie in climatic conditions from earlier in Quaternary time beginning 2.6 million years ago, one of the major problems of modern Spain is the threat of desertification, i.e., the impoverishment of arid, semi-arid, and even some humid ecosystems caused by the joint impact of human activities and drought. Nearly half of Spain is moderately or severely affected, especially in the arid East, Almeria, Murcia, as well as in much of sub-arid Spain, the Ebro Basin. The government has adopted policies of afforestation, but some authorities believe that natural vegetation regrowth would yield more speedy and more permanent benefits. Spain is characterized by the overlap of one fundamental climatic division between humid and semi-arid and arid zones by another, the threefold division of the peninsula into maritime, continental, and mountain climates. This complexity results from the peninsula's size, which is large enough to generate a continental thermal regime, its location close to the Atlantic Ocean and North Africa, exposing it to both maritime and Saharan influences, and its mountainous relief, which not only produces its own climatic zones but also exaggerates local aridity through the creation of rain shadows on the mountain's leeward sides. The Pyrenees and the Cantabrian ranges play an important role in the Spanish climate, holding the warm, dry subtropical airstream over Spain during the summer months. In general, westerly winds from the North Atlantic are dominant most of the year, while the warm, dry Saharan airstream blows less frequently. Some local or seasonal winds are notable. The easterly Levanter can bring as many as 15 consecutive days of dry, clear weather to the coastal strip in the region of the Strait of Gibraltar. The Levache brings a hot, dry, dust-laden wind that blights vegetation in spring from the southern sector to the Spanish Levantine lowlands, the provinces of Castellón, Valencia, and Alicante, and in spring and summer a wind from the same sector, the Solano, carries unbearably hot, dry, suffocating weather over the Andalusian plain. Northern Spain, from Galicia to northern Catalonia, or Catalunya, is characterized by a temperate humid or maritime type of climate, having high rainfall and an average temperature in January of 43 degrees Fahrenheit 6 degrees Celsius near the coast but less than that inland and in the mountains. La Coruña has a moderate annual temperature, ranging from 48 degrees Fahrenheit 9 degrees Celsius in winter to 64 degrees Fahrenheit 18 degrees Celsius in summer, and the annual rainfall is about 38 inches at 65 mm. The Spanish economy began to industrialize in the late 18th century, and industrialization and economic growth continued throughout the 19th century. However, it was limited to a few relatively small areas of the country, especially to Catalonia where textile manufacture took hold, and the Basque Country where iron and steel were made. The overall pace of economic growth was slower than that of the major Western European countries, so that by the early 20th century Spain appeared poor and underdeveloped compared with countries such as Great Britain, Germany, France, and even Italy. The Spanish Civil War and its aftermath left Spain even farther behind, and the economic policies of the Franco regime failed to revitalize the economy. For nearly 2 decades after the war, the government followed a policy of autarky, or national economic self-sufficiency, similar to the policies of the pre-World War II fascist regimes in Germany and Italy. This approach entailed high levels of government intervention through highly protective tariffs, currency regulation, marketing boards for agriculture, and import controls. There was also a high degree of government ownership realized through the National Industrial Institute, INI, which was created in 1941 to develop defense-related industries and other industries ignored by the private sector. The self-imposed economic isolation was reinforced by the Western democracies, which shunned Spain after 1945 because of its fascist government. Spain did not receive Marshall Plan aid from the United States and was excluded from a number of international organizations. Spain's autarkic policies were a failure, and by the late 1950s the country was on the verge of economic collapse. This crisis led to a major change in economic policy, and in 1959 a team of technocrats announced the Economic Stabilization Plan. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to comment, like, subscribe and tap the notification bell for more updates. Goodbye and see you to our next flight.